Dan Bylsma returns to Pittsburgh, where he once coached the Penguins to a Stanley Cup, to coach a team where some, at least some in the front office, including allegedly the general manager, didn't even want him. Ooh, the world is cruel.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy game day, Seattle hockey fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team, the Seattle Kraken, every single day. I'm your host, Erica L. Ayala. I've been with you since the beginning of the show, also a contributor to CBS Sports and the founder of Black Rosie Media, where we empower Black women and melanated creators in sports media. Before we get into the latest drama to hit the Seattle Kraken airwaves, I don't know, let me tell you, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the NFL season or end the NFL season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets if you win or lose your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right. 32 flavors is what you get at Baskin Robbins. 32 thoughts is what you get over at Sportsnet. And Elliotte Friedman mentioning the Seattle Kraken in the latest episode, talking about a lot of different things, including that Dan Bylsma was not the first pick for the Seattle Kraken. Well, obviously he got the job, but allegedly Ron Francis, Elliotte says, didn't want to let go of Dave Hakstol, didn't feel that was the right move, which is something I have talked about multiple times on this show. I didn't agree with the decision at the time, but more so because there are so many things to fix. And don't worry, I will get back to that point. But, the conversation is that Ron Francis wanted to go with a different coach. And Todd McLellan, who is now with the Detroit Red Wings, according to Elliotte Friedman, was the number one choice for Ron Francis. Of course, we just played Detroit, and that was not a great head-to-head. So apparently, according to this episode of 32 Thoughts, there was a divide between the people who agreed with Ron Francis and didn't necessarily want Dan Bylsma, and then those who effectively won out. Now, the reason I think this is interesting, Elliotte Friedman, very connected, not saying that there isn't some truth to that. I mean, this happens all the time. I'm the kind of person, not everyone appreciates this, but I'm the kind of person where, hey, once we make a decision, I'll get behind the decision. I'll also, if you were asking me, tell you if I agree with the decision or not. And so I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with disagreeing with a choice or, saying, hey, this is what I would choose, but, you go with the group. The thing that's interesting here is that I've always thought that, again, some of the problems with the Seattle Kraken were more indicative of what was happening in the front office than what was happening with Dave Hakstol. Now, that being said, I personally, I personally prefer the style of Dan Bylsma to Dave Hakstol. Now, where this could get really salacious is if there are things that parts of the front office are doing, whether it's Ron Francis or anyone who agreed with him at the time, according to Elliotte Friedman, that Dan Bylsma wasn't the guy. Now you have a split front office. And for me, this explains so much. I've been on this podcast trying to figure out what the crap is going on. It feels like an organization that doesn't agree in the direction, like some people pulling north, some people pulling south, some people pulling east, some people pulling west. And so in effect, you go nowhere. Or in the case of the Seattle Kraken, you're 7 games out of a playoff spot after you desperately wanted to return to the playoffs. Another thing that was really interesting in this episode was Elliotte Friedman talking about how Ron Francis, just by his nature, is more of a cautious, kind of take it easy, take it slow kind of guy. And he's not going to, make snap judgments and decisions reacting, right? He's going to take his time with things. And that completely plays out. It's also some of the things that, give me agita, when I'm thinking of this Seattle Kraken team, because I just don't understand always what the vision is. In some ways, we're getting sped up. In other ways, we seem to be decelerating. And maybe that explains the contracts. Chandler Stevenson, don't really think it's working out. Brandon Montour seems to be a better contract, but we're still 7 games out. So if there's a rift in the front office, and I certainly hope that what's happening and why this maybe is being reported is not because it's like, see, told you so. There was one time I've been listening to a lot of the radio broadcasts instead of watching on TV. And but I do remember, and sometimes I'll rewatch on ESPN, though. Oh gosh, that commercial, it just with the building and noise, and I just, oh gosh, it's just really tough. That's why I like to listen to the radio, among other reasons. Anyway, I was watching or rewatching television broadcast, and I found it fascinating that Eddie Olczyk and John Forsland were really going in at this time. They were going in regarding Daniel Sprong, but also just special teams overall. They felt that Daniel Sprong should be on the power play. Daniel Sprong is currently with Coachella Valley. He was placed on waivers. And the reason I'm mentioning that, whether you agree or not that Daniel Sprong should be on the power play, I'm not sure. Well, I mean, he definitely more the power play than the penalty kill, right? Am I right? But did he give enough to warrant playing an entire game to just play on the power play? I mean, the Seattle Kraken power play is pretty bad. But also what's pretty bad is just the lapses when we're even 5-on-5. So I don't know that Daniel Sprong would have done enough to help in that situation. Anyway, but I found it so interesting because it just sounded to me a little bit like attack is too strong a word. A very direct criticism, not a critique, a criticism of the coaching staff. Daniel Sprong coming to the Seattle Kraken was an interesting question mark way to shake up the team. Now let's talk about it. The team needed a shakeup. In my mind's eye, when I envisioned a shakeup, we were talking about it on the show. We were talking about trades. We were talking about the resets. We were talking about all of this. Now, who controls who goes on the ice? Who's in the lineup? That's the coaching staff. But who makes the final decisions when it comes to who is actually on the roster? That's the front office. Never would I have guessed that what we needed was to bring Ding Dong Daniel Sprong back. And I guess the coaching staff agreed, because outside of a handful of games early on, he was a healthy scratch. That to me, first, okay, you bring Daniel Sprong, maybe that's what you had available, to the point of Elliotte Friedman. You want to be cautious, but you also know you have to do something, or you're being told. I don't know why my voice just went so deep. I wanted it to be dramatic. Or you're being told, right? or you're being told to do something. And that in hindsight, but even at the moment, I think was showing the discrepancy, the everyone's not quite on the same page as what to do with this team. I think we can all agree it's not working. It is not meeting expectation. Even on the 32 Thoughts podcast, they mention the Supersonics and their inevitable return, which it sounds like at this point. And you don't want to be a losing franchise when it's not a new kid on the block. It's like, you know, Andy's favorite toy coming back, you know. It's Woody coming back, and you're not Woody. You're not you're not Woody. You know? Anyway, um it just feels like in hindsight is that there have been times where this organization is not on the same page. Now, that happens. Communication is made more difficult by human emotions at times. And I mean that in, I shouldn't have said emotion. I do think communication is complicated by human emotion, but also human error, right? You forget things, you misinterpret things. Elliotte Friedman actually had to make a correction because there was reporting saying, and I even talked about it, that Lewicki met with the team when he meant to say, and he clarified on this very same podcast, that he arrived to Buffalo. And so it wasn't a meeting like we're in an office and we're meeting. It was like, okay, we're going to meet, as in be in the same place at the same time. I'm going to meet, or I will arrive to Buffalo at the same time that the team is in Buffalo. He said he didn't know whether there was an actual meeting with players, but it was just interesting that Lewicki would show up when usually he is not traveling to the same city where the team is unless it's the playoffs. So that's a little bit of an aside, but again, to the point of communication. So it's, I don't put it, I don't hold it against anyone. If there's miscommunication, sometimes you're like, oh, okay, that's what you meant. Sometimes it's like, you know what? That was kind of, I thought you were doing me dirty, Doug. I didn't like how you said that. And then it's like, oh, that's what you meant. Okay, well, just in the future, package that in a different way. There's all kinds of ways to have miscommunication. What I hope is not the case is that this extended limbo that this team is in is not because ego and miscommunication are rampant above, but then also between the coaching staff and the front office. Because that would be unfortunate for the players involved and for us as people who are watching this team. Get it together, folks. Get on the same page. Maybe Lewicki does need to have a meeting in Buffalo, in Pittsburgh, wherever, to get everyone on the same page. Because it's looking hella sloppy right now on the ice and among those from the coaching staff and up. It's looking sloppy to the point where, and I've alluded to this before, if we have to be sellers, who's taking? Who are we selling to? Who's picking up what we're throwing down? It's kind of a mess. I'm covering another Seattle team, the Seattle Storm, a little bit of a hot mess in their offseason, and those things impact trade value. So even if you're not trying to still win games this season, which I hope is not the case, but even if that's so, even if we're in all on tank mode, get on the same page. I feel bad for the guy, Dan Bylsma, going back to Pittsburgh, and then the news drops that the GM didn't even want you. Again, could it be a little bit more sensationalized? Sure. If this story had dropped when they introduced Dan Bylsma, Ronnie Francis goes, hey, I didn't even want the guy. And, it's a little odd. But that's a different context from now. Teams 7 games out, they absolutely bomb a game in Detroit. And now this story comes out. You see what I mean? That's kind of how I felt, or maybe you don't understand what I mean. Timing is what I'm talking about. The timing of that Sprong anecdote on the broadcast seemed a little off to me. A little off to me. I'm like, the guy's been a healthy scratch for like 6 games. And now, in fairness, I literally just said I don't listen to every TV broadcast. I listen to a lot of them. I rewatch them because I want to see what's happening on the ice. But I don't always listen to everyone. I don't always rewatch the games, but I always listen on audio. It just seemed like, I mean, the guy's been maybe that's something you say after 2, 3 healthy scratches, but after like 5, 6, 7, it's like, the ship has sailed. The coaching staff that's not a part of the vision. It was just weird. It's like little timing things, little weird things. And the reason that could become a story, I don't know if it is right now. It's just reporting. Is it a larger story? We don't know. But in the context of this season, it feels a little, icky. Are we going to blame the new coach? When I said, and I wasn't alone, that even changing the head coach is not going to save this team. And every time I say that, what do I also tell you? Come on, tell me. Everydayers, OGers, what do I always? So if it's not only the coach, baby, that means we have to look at the front office. I know there are some people who show up in the comments that don't like me saying that. But if you get rid of a coach and the new coach isn't doing any better, is actually maybe in some ways doing worse. Either way, there's 2 scenarios, maybe a few more, but 2 main scenarios. Either you made the wrong coaching hire or the coach wasn't the problem. I've been saying, the coach wasn't the problem since before Dan was hired. But I'm just putting on my tinfoil hat. If you are someone who wants people to entertain that the coaching hire was the wrong hire, you get what I'm saying? I know this is very, not conspiracy theory is a little bit wild, but there are worlds in which this could be a little more devious. I hope it's not. I really hope it's not. Because that means that the problems are bigger than even I thought. We also got a few names. I wouldn't say they're new, but again, we're hearing 2 names on the 32 Thoughts podcast regarding trades. I don't see how the Seattle Kraken get to the trade deadline without making a trade. I think it might be difficult, as I alluded to, but you got to do something, baby, right? We will talk about all of that. And then also Dan Bylsma's return to Pittsburgh, what we need to see in Pittsburgh. That's coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken, as I mentioned at the top of the show, brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. That's whether your first $5 bet wins or loses. I'm wishing you well. But either way, you're getting $200 in bonus bets. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need to place your live bets, same game parlays, and so much more right there where you're about to make your NFL bets. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. They also have PWHL odds. I've talked about that on the Women's Hockey Report, our Saturday show. They have, when they're in season, the WNBA. So I love that FanDuel also has women's sports up there. Visit fanduel.com to join today. Get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's fanduel.com. Make the playoff season, the NFL playoff season, unforgettable, because for us in the NHL, it might very well be forgettable as Seattle Kraken fans. Anyway, FanDuel is the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Hey, thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Went a little long in the first segment, had a lot of thoughts. I don't think it was quite 32, but it was a lot. It was a lot of thoughts. 32 thoughts on the 30-second franchise. That could be a podcast or a segment. I'm gonna play around. I'm gonna play around with it. Workshop. On 32 thoughts. We also heard Elliotte Friedman throw out some names regarding trades. Been hearing Oliver Bjorkstrand and Andre Burakovsky. Now, like a month or so ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, what are we getting for Andre Burakovsky? I don't know. I don't think he's been great. I don't think, some of it has been circumstance. Like I said, timing. Some of it has been timing with Andre Burakovsky with his entire tenure with the Seattle Kraken. This year, I don't know. He's healthy, but something's not clicking. I don't know what it is. But they did, make some changes to the lines. And maybe it's been working for Berkey. Anyway, here we go. Andre Burakovsky this season. 41 games played. He's got 4 goals, 12 assists, 16 points overall, -8 overall. Shots at 64 shots. I mean, there's nothing great. Nothing great. I apologize to you, Ford. There's not much great that we're seeing with the Seattle Kraken team. We can break down parts of the game. I think if you break down parts of the game, there are things that Manny Beniers has been doing well. There are things that Shane Wright has been doing well. Jaden Schwartz. I mean, Eberle, before he freaking broke his pelvis. Oh, Lasai. He was off to a promising start. Our captain. We haven't talked about our captain since like the first month of the season. Holy cannoli. Anyway, that's what Berkey's given us. Whoops. Let me go back here. Oliver Bjorkstrand, a little bit better. I've liked his game for the most part. He's got 2 goals in the last 5 games. He got the team riled up. Woo! Scrapping it up. I know some of you love to see it. And honestly, at this point, throw off the gloves. Give us something to cheer for. I don't know. But if we look at his stats, 43 games. I want to make sure I got that right. Yes. Okay. I lost my place for a minute there. 43 games, 13 goals, 15 assists. He's +1. Shots, 95. 64 for Berkey, 95 for the Maestro. McCann, 107. Jaden Schwartz, 101. Maddie Beniers, 80 shots. So I don't want to lose Bjorkstrand. And that's exactly why, if these are some of the conversations, he might be the one to go. We've talked about Tanev, Yanni Gord, now Bjorkstrand again, Andre Burakovsky again. I've also seen a report a couple of days ago that it's kind of like, if we see some defensemen go, it's bad. Although Larson doesn't seem to be among the fray. There have been reports that Will Borgen wanted out. That's not surprising to me. I think, again, the phrasing and the timing of the report, a little bit interesting. Well, I asked the question to Ron Francis, and he didn't say, well, Oregon wanted a trade, but he alluded to the writing being on the wall and Will Borgen wanting to be and put himself in a better situation. So did he want to trade because he didn't like the coach, because he thought there was a rift between the coaching staff and the front office? I don't know. Maybe. But it's not, my point in saying all of that is not outside of the realm of possibility. And I don't think Ron Francis was secretive that in conversations, Will Borgen saw the value in getting out of Dodge, right? Oh, this Kraken team, man, it's heartbreaking because, I saw it coming 2 seasons ago. I said it multiple times. Might have arrived too. And what's the game plan now that we got to the playoffs ahead of schedule? I think we're still trying to figure out the answer. And again, it seems like the front office is fractured on this, which only makes it more difficult for the coaching staff and, of course, the players. That being said, there is no excuse for some of what we're seeing on the ice, and the players know it. So we're going to hear a little bit from Brandon Tanev, and I'm going to post the full media availability with Dan Bylsma. He said some interesting things. He was asked to reflect a lot on his time in Pittsburgh. He mirrored and echoed a lot of what Brandon Tanev said regarding what the conversations are around the team. So I'm not going to play that on today's episode, but you can check out the bonus content that we have up on YouTube to hear what he had to say, because I thought it was really interesting. And, you can tell Pittsburgh meant a lot to him. Of course it did. But coming up, we'll hear from Brandon Tanev. What are we hearing from the team? And is it any different than what we've been hearing? I'll break that down coming up on today's episode of Locked on Kraken. Today's episode of Locked on Kraken, once again brought to you by our friends at Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions that you forgot about or that you realized that you were paying for twice? Well, I haven't found duplicate subscriptions, but I have used Rocket Money to just show my spending habits, kind of track it all, right? I have a new company. I've been a freelancer. So keeping my personal versus freelance versus business expenses sorted can be a nightmare of a job. And Rocket Money has helped me because it's a personal finance app that helps find and cancel unwanted subscriptions. It helps monitor your spending, and it can even help lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place. That's my favorite part. Whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit in 2025, like getting more goals for the Seattle Kraken. Although I don't think Rocket Money can help with that. Anyway, let's get back to the ad read. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved over $500 million in canceled subscriptions, and individually saving members up to $740 a year when you use all of the premium apps. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and get rid of your unwanted negative energy. Okay, I did it again. I'm sorry. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. So it's not /locked-on today, because that's a thing. It's /locked-on, but I want you to go today. Okay. So that's rocketmoney.com/LOCKEDON. Once again, rocketmoney.com/locked-on. I try to have fun with the ad reads for those of you who are listening with the ads. If you're not, you're missing a fun time. I make little puns, little jokes. I'm punny. Aha. I hate that joke. I can't believe I just said that. Anyway, I'm trying to be positive here. I don't know what to make of these reports. I kind of feel bad for Dan Bylsma and the coaching staff. As I've mentioned multiple times, if you're an everyday or an OGer, The coaching staff is not beyond reproach. They are not beyond critique and criticism. That the timing of that Ronnie didn't want Disco Dan just seemed a little off to me. Yeah, like, do we have to do this? Like, way to rub salt in the wound. The guy's going to Pittsburgh where he won a Stanley Cup, and basically it's like, you're not crap. We didn't even want you. She doesn't even go here. Like, that's brutal. That's brutal. I as a personality, I don't know the guy. Like, I've never had a beer with Dan Bylsma or Dave Axel for that matter, or any of these people, just to be clear. But the vibes, I like the vibes. I like how he approaches the game. And he talked a little bit about that and his return to the NHL and what he was looking for there. And it's an uphill climb right now. I personally don't think the front office needs to overreact and get rid of the coaching staff. But there has to be a meeting of the minds because we are not on the same page. We are not at the same game, at the same arena, in the same decade. Like, there's just all kinds of discombobulation. And you got to get that figured out. Okay. But it's not. So all of this is happening with the franchise. But there are things like marking your man, like zone entries and exits, like think with some pride on special teams, on the power play and PK. Those are things that you gotta figure out as the players on the ice. And Brandon Tanev knows that. And it seems like the guys in the locker room know that. So here's what he had to say at morning skate.
Well, Brandon, just coming
every 20 minutes, every 60 minutes, it's right from the puck drop every night, and that's the game and on the learning curve. I think obviously the NHL is a very good league, and you got to get to speed as quick as you can. There's no learning curve essentially, and it's you're going out there and getting to your game as fast as you can, playing to the team dynamic, and ultimately getting 2 points if you can every night, and that's the game plan, the mindset we want to have going forward. I think the identity, like you mentioned, needs to be right from the puck drop. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no waiting for the second shift, the second period, the third period. If we're behind one or we're up one, it's throughout the game, every shift, every 20 minutes, every 60 minutes, and that has to be the mindset for every game going forward.
I mean, again, he's saying all the right things. I did get the sense, and hopefully you did too, or let me know if you did too. You don't have to agree with me. I know a lot of you don't, which is fine. I got the sense that it was also kind of like a turn the page, right? Turn the page. We know these things, talked about them, know what's acceptable, know what the expectation is, we know what's unacceptable. Let's just do it. Which is why on yesterday's really random rant of an episode, I just need to let that out. It's just a release. Although I do think, sports psychology is critically important for this team right now. And it's also something that was mentioned on 32 Thoughts. What was the word they kept using? I can't remember, but they were talking about, let me see if it's in the notes real quick. I don't remember exactly the terminology that they were using, but frustration, right? There's clear frustration with the Seattle Kraken team, understandable frustration with the Seattle Kraken team. And yesterday's episode was about, okay, well, what are you going to do about it? What are you doing about it? Okay? I'm tired of talking. I'm tired. I'm almost glad that this really random story came out just to give me something else to talk about. I'm tired of talking about how you're talking about how you know that it's not good enough and that you just got to buckle down and that, you need to play a complete from the first. I'm tired of that. Oh, okay. I got it. The first 40 times. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? So I think they just want to move forward. This Pittsburgh team, I mentioned it a little bit yesterday, but we at least on paper, for whatever that means for this Kraken team, because I don't even know. On paper, we should be able to hang with this team. If you look at some of the, head-to-heads, I can't find my, I'll just go to NHL.com. I thought I had the graphic from the Seattle Kraken. I don't know. I'm just going off. But here we go. Power play. Well, ours is 22nd in the league. Theirs is 5th overall. So don't go to the penalty box at all. 25.8% clip for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Penalty kill is a little bit more even, but still 79% for the Pens, 77.5%, but that is the difference between 15th overall and 23rd overall in the league. Faceoffs favor the Pens. Goals for 2.98 versus 2.89. That's 15th overall for the Pens, 22nd overall for the Kraken. Goals against. Woo! Now here's something. We just play like we played in Buffalo or like we played the Canes that one time. Goals against 3.23 for the Kraken, 25th overall in the league, to 3.67 goals against per games played for the Penguins. If we only had a scorer or like a team of them, we need to shoot the puck. We need to shoot the puck. All right? We need to play 5-on-5. We need to shoot the puck. I can't imagine we will see Philip Grubauer in net. I can't imagine we will see Philip Grubauer in net. Joey comes back and gets right to work. That's another thing, another bad trend for this team is having to overwork goaltenders. Who's been there for all of them? Well, some of y'all aren't ready for that conversation. So I'll leave it for another day. Just get a win, boys. Talked about it yesterday. I shouldn't have gotten so worked up today because we've already manifested. We have already affirmed this Seattle Kraken team will do whatever it takes to get their 10th, if it's their 10th road win in Pittsburgh Tuesday night. We claimed it. I should have worn the UMA hat. It's in the other room. I should have just put the UMA hat on because we are claiming this victory. Not because of anything that the Pens can or can't do. It's because this Seattle Kraken team needs a win. And at some point in time, you just have to decide to win. You have to decide that you are willing, capable, able, and committed to doing whatever it takes to win a hockey game. Now, I said I had a hypothetical on how I would craft this team. If you listen to yesterday's episode, the 32 thoughts kind of took place of that really quickly. Might get into it tomorrow, depending on how the game goes. Make the guys battle for it. The next practice, even on a morning skate, who cares? Right? It's not like we're exerting full effort, or it certainly doesn't look like it in a game. Make them run paces, randomize the teams. Team that wins practice, I'll figure out a lineup. Who wants it? Who wants it more? That's what I need to see. Jaden Schwartz, he's given me effort. Yanni Gourde, he gives effort. Joey Dax, oh, for sure. Evans, Cartier, they're doing their job. Matty B, for the most part, he is a top pick for us, so he's got to figure out how to score. It is made difficult when you're a centerman and, maybe other things aren't really going the way you want. But I need to know who's got the moxie, who's got the P&V, baby, sandpaper, juice, jam, all that. Who has it? Who wants to win? Who has committed to winning tonight's game. That's who will play. And that's it. I don't give a hoot who it is. Give me the guys that want to win. In theory, right? If they're good enough to make the roster, an NHL roster, they should be able to show up. So put whoever is out there, put out there whoever is committed to doing whatever it takes. Because there are some guys on this team that I question on a day in, day out basis if they are committed. And that's unfortunate. Burns my grits. But that's where we are. It's a game day. I'll probably be listening on the radio. I want you to be kind to yourselves. Be kind to one another. And it's a game day. Not in Seattle, but it is a game day for the Seattle Kraken, which means we are holding fast. We are staying true, and loud and proud we say, let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.